Hey guys, and welcome to my new segment, That Herp Derp Deck. My first Herp Derp deck is going to be Dragunitys. So, these guys came out in their own structure deck. Of course, it didn't come with the most important guy, Dragunity Phalanx, the main tuner of the deck. If you don't know what the cards do, I will explain them as I go. And if you do know, you probably already know why I'm doing this profile or this, discussion. So Dragunitys had a lot of hype before release, and with cards like Dragunity Knight Vajrayana being released in Star Strike Blast, people had early interest in what these cards were going to be. They then came out in Dual Terminal, so they came out with cards like Dragunity Ducks, Dragunity Legionnaire, and finally Dragunity Phalanx. Dragunity Achilles, or Achilles, whatever the way you want to call them, didn't come out until the structure deck. So there was no Legionnaire Achilles combo at the time of release. Dragunitys before, I forgot what YCS last year, were favored to win because of two combos. Now, because people are always scared of loops, just like the wind-up loop is scary right now, the Inzector loop is scary, X-Sabers had a loop that dropped your hand, and all that kind of stuff. Well, Dragunitys had a Synchro loop. Now, Synchros weren't anything new at the time when Dragunitys came out, but they certainly were to a point where Six Samurais could just drop a Shien. Now, how do you deal with Shien? Well, you can, do a level 8 synchro like Scrap Dragon, Red Dragon Archfiend, Thought Ruler Archfiend, things like that. So, when the Dragunity Legion structure deck was announced, everyone thought, before the spoiler was out, that Dragunity Phalanx would be released. Now, Dragunity Phalanx was in Hidden Arsenal 3 as a secret rare, and in the Dual Terminal that was just released beforehand. So, they all expected that they'd have that combo built in the deck. Some also estimated that maybe Dragunity Vajrayana, the Synchro, would be one of the supers, and or common in the set, just like other Synchros had been common before. But, when the deck was released, there was no Dragunity Phalanx, nor was there a Dragunity Knight Vajrayana, or any of the Dragunity Knight cards, period. So, people had to go out and get Phalanxes. Now, Phalanx, before all the hype went around, was about a $2, maximum $5 card. But, when the deck came out, it jumped to about $15 for one. Dragunity Knight Vajrayana, on the other hand, came out in Star Strike Blast, and on release it was about nothing, because no one used it. It wasn't usable because of its, you had to have a Dragon-type tuner and a Wing Beast non-tuner, so there was Mist Valleys and things like that, but they weren't very powerful at the time, so what was the point? It also used things like equip spells, which people, weren't thinking about at that point in time. So, Vajrayana then jumped to about $25 to $30 for one. Alright, now I will explain the loops that I was talking about. So, the first is Dragunity Ducks. Now, Dragunity Ducks' effect is when it is summoned, normal summoned, you can equip one Dragunity Dragon-type monster from your graveyard to him as an equipped spell. Now, he also has an effect that increases his attack points, but most people didn't pay attention to this because he wouldn't be on the field very long anyways. But, if you were to have Dragunity Knight Ducks, or Dragunity Ducks on the field with an equipped spell, Dragunity, he would be at 1900, able to hit Thunder King. Now, the problem with this is that, what was the point if you're just going to run into him? Well, there's different things. On release, they thought the rulings about Dragunity Achilles were that when it was just sent period from the field, as in he avoided certain rulings. but it turned out it didn't, and I'll explain that later. So, after you have your ducks on the field with your Dragunity Phalanx equipped, because that's usually what you're going to go for because of Phalanx's effect. Phalanx's effect is that when he is equipped to a monster period, he can special summon himself to the field in attack or defense, obviously. So what you would do is that you have ducks, equip Phalanx, special Phalanx, Synchro level 6. Now your level 6 would be Dragunity Vajrayana. I personally don't have mine because I got rid of them at regionals. So just imagine a level 6 Synchro, and you can look up what it does later. But it also didn't stay on the field. It had 1900 attack, and it could remove a equipped spell card or an equipped card from it to double its attack. Now I'll get into a combo with it later when I talk about Dragunity Acolytes. So once again, you would take Phalanx from your grave, equip it to Vajrayana, special summon Phalanx, and sync for level 8. This was extremely powerful because a first turn Stardust or a late game Scrap Dragon could win games easily, and this scared people because of how easy it was. The problem that occurred though at the YCS was that people sided things against field spells. At the time, Gravekeepers were out and they had field spells, but they were slowly dying off as soon as the 6 Samurai became too powerful for anybody to handle. So the next combo in the deck deals with, Dragunity Legionnaire and Dragunity Acolytes. Acolytes, Achilles, whatever. So Dragunity Legionnaire's effect is that when he is normal summoned, you can equip one Dragunity Dragon-type monster in your graveyard to this card. So his second effect would be that you can send one equipped spell card or equipped card on your side of the field, so it doesn't have to be equipped to Legionnaire, to the graveyard to destroy one face-up monster on the field. Okay, that's pretty good, but you know, if you get your Phalanx, you could special summon and sing for level 5, or destroy one card. So it wasn't too bad before the release of the structure deck. But when Dragunity Acolytes came into play after the structure deck release, we see that there's a combo with Dragunity Legionnaire and Dragunity Acolytes, where you would play it, equip Acolytes, use Legionnaire's effect, sending Acolytes to the grave, using his effect, and then Acolytes' effect, which when Acolytes is sent to the graveyard while equipped to a Dragunity equipped to a card period, destroy one card on the field. It's a mandatory effect, so let's say you played Legionnaire or used the other effect of Dragunity Acolytes. When this card is normal summoned, you can special summon one Dragunity type monster from your hand and equip this card to it. If you summoned it, special Legionnaire on your first turn, and didn't do anything else, and your opponent decided to MST the Acolytes, you would be forced to destroy your Legionnaire because it's a mandatory effect. Now, some people got confused with Dragunity Acolytes' effect, whereas people thought that if Dragunity Acolytes was equipped to Legionnaire, and Legionnaire got destroyed by any means, you would destroy a card on the field. This turned out to be not the case, as this would no longer be equipped to a card that is destroyed by battle, by card effect, or removed from the field. Thus, Dragunity Acolytes would not get his effect when destroyed. Now, if he was MST'd, Heavy Stormed, or otherwise sent to the grave through an effect, there is a good chance he would get his effect, depending on what kind of effect it was. Now, as you can see, that's extremely powerful. And decks like 6 Sams that, had Magatama, but they usually only ran, 2, and other cards, they could use their effects, but having that double destruction just off of one card was still pretty, threatening. Now, now to go back to Acolytes and the combo you can do with Vajrayana. Vajrayana's effect, remember, it says that you can not detach, but send one equipped card equipped to this card to the graveyard to double this card's attack. So what would you do? You would summon ducks, sink into Vajrayana, equip Acolytes in your grave, remove or send, just pump to 36 because your attack was 1900, and destroy one card on the field from Acolytes' effect. This could be game winning if they just have a face down or a card you can't get over with no back row. Attack for 36 directly. That was huge. People were definitely scared. But at the YCS, the deck flopped. Just as Dark Worlds did later on, in this format, we see that Dragunitys barely did anything. They just were too slow, too inconsistent, and people just didn't do anything. Now, later on, after the release of Duelist Pack Crow, people started looking at Dragunitys again, because Zephyros the Elite was a perfect fit for the deck. Zephyros the Elite's effect is that you can return one face-up card on the field to your hand to special summon this card from the grave, then take 400 damage. This effect can only be used once per duel. So much like Blow Up Ball, this is a 1 per duel effect. Now, this card is a winged beast. So you could, in theory, summon ducks, get your phalanx, special phalanx, push ducks to your hand, get Zephyros, sink into your shenanigans, and then have a ducks for next turn. Or the more likely, you could return your Dragon Ravine after you've already used its effect, and then use it again. Now, I'll get to Dragon Ravine after, because it's not specifically used in Dragunitys anymore, but it was definitely a huge factor back then. Once again, the deck flopped and it didn't see much play. It still doesn't see a lot of competitive play because of its inconsistency issues compared to decks like Inzectors, which are, in a sense, a better version of the deck, without synchroing, of course. So, after the YCS, no one did anything. People, cited in Fabled Cerebrals. When it's discarded, you get a special summon. It's an extra tuner kind of thing. People have tried lots of things, the Malefic builds, and then my personal favorite, the Stardust Dragon Assault Mode builds. So, Dragon Canyon, Dragon Ravine, different names for the OCG and TCG. So, it states that you can, once per turn, discard one card from your hand, any card, to either add one Dragunity card to your hand, or send one Dragon-type monster from your deck to the graveyard. So things like Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon were put in this deck, because you could somehow get it from the grave. Red Eyes Wyvern, because you could just remove it in the end phase and summon your Red Eyes Darkness Metal. So lots of decks have looked into this. Most recently, we see the Dragon Canyon being used in Chaos builds of the Dragon deck, because it's an easy way to get cards in the graveyard and to send Wyvern, Eclipse Wyvern, to the grave to get its effect. Alright, so now that we have the basic ideas of what Dragunitys are, how they started out, and what they did, we get into the Herp Derpness. Because it was so inexpensive to build the deck, just like most of the decks, the structure decks that come out right away are, people thought they would be everywhere, and they were. They were everywhere. People used it all the time. The problem was that it was too easy to get rid of. A simple effect Veiler shut down the deck. It was that easy. So unlike Inzectors today, where if you have a Mantis in hand and you use Dragonfly's effect, they Veiler it, you could just drop Mantis and have a 24 beater. Dragunitys couldn't do that. They had Arma Mistleton and Arma Leviathan that came out in the structure deck, but both these cards didn't see any play because of their inconsistency issues, once again, with their effects. I won't get into them, but you can look into them yourself because they're not that important. So, the Herp Derp comes from the fact that of those combos that I explained, it was an auto-play deck for the most part. There was no thinking involved. It was get ducks to your hand as fast as possible, get a Stardust on the field, and then later on possibly get a Thought Ruler and get a small lock that doesn't really lock down your opponent so much, but doesn't allow them to use cards like Defissure, Magic Cylinder, etc. So, that is why the deck is considered Herp Derp. A lot of new players to the game who like dragons will obviously be, levitated or gravitated to these kind of decks. They don't take a lot of thought, they're very easy to build and play, and the cards are relatively inexpensive for the main deck. Probably the most expensive at the moment, if you're playing just the standard build, would be Zephyros the Elite, which is a $15 card still because of its utilities in other decks. All of the other cards, including the Synchros, are fairly limited to, under $10. Another play of the deck with earlier on was the Trident Dragon OTK. Dragion OTK. Trident Dragion, as most of you probably know, is a card that you tribute or send 2 cards from your side of the field to the graveyard. He gets 2 more attacks. This is good because you could hit your opponent for 9,000 damage if their field was cleared, or you could clear their field of monsters if they were in your way and possibly get a 3,000 direct hit. This took a lot of resources, and many people did this play prematurely and got hit with things like Bottomless Trap Hole, Effect Veiler, Solemn Warning, Solemn Judgment, and today Max C ruins the deck because they are reliant on Synchron. For example, just the simple Ducks play involves special summoning Phalanx twice, 1 Synchro Summon, and then another Synchro Summon on top of that to get to your level 8. A total of 4 cards for your opponent that they just plus 3'd off your simple level 8 loop. Now, Dragunitys haven't been hit really in any shape or form, but they're still way too slow to compete with today's meta. Inzectors are their basically counterpart, but they are the once per turn. So you can keep a card on the field and then just use it again next turn. Unlike Dragunitys, which are only getting their effects when they're normal summoned. So a lot of players today still run Dragunitys, but most of them have different ideas on how to run them, and there's lots of different builds out there. None of which are consistently competitive with the meta today, and decks like Dino Rabbit, which can bring out Dolko to destroy your effect monsters, or Lagia to destroy anything, put down blocks. Many decks play Fiendish Chain, Effect Veiler, and Max C main deck, making the deck, very vulnerable to a lot of things. Dark Worlds play their own field spell, Hero Gate plays their own field spell, Phoenix OTK plays its own field spell, other Dragon decks play Dragon Vein that you can't use, only the owner of the card can use. So it's supposed to be an aggressive deck, but it's turned into a control base, play your cards at the very right moment deck, which makes it even slower and even less competitive. The fact that I can get a first turn Stardust barely hurts decks like Rabbit, Samurais for the most part, or anything like that. If Samurai's getting a Churia Beast on the field, unless you get very lucky in getting an Ackles to the grave before this happens, and or getting a Stardust on the field to somewhat stall, you're not going to do very well against them. Because you need the field spell and or Cards of Consonance to get things in the grave. Luckily, Dragunity Legionnaire only has 1,200 attack points, meaning it does not get hit by things like Bottomless Trap Hole. But it does get hit by a new sided card that used to be played formats ago. Trap Hole. Trap Hole just, shuts down Inzectors and Dragunitys because their effects do nothing when they're destroyed. So that was really my entire thing about Dragunitys. I personally like the deck. I like the idea, but I don't like how people champion the deck. It's not very competitive and it's too slow for this meta. People need to learn that just because you like a deck doesn't mean that it's the best deck ever. It gets shut down by, just about every card in the meta right now and hasn't topped a single YCS. I think it came in the top 32 at one point, but that was about it. Some regionals see it top and locals everywhere see the herp derpness of it because they get a lucky Legionnaire draw. And that's all the deck is. It's getting that Legionnaire playoff to, somewhat slow down your opponent to the point where you can maybe get a Stardust on the field to stall out a little bit more until they run out of resources. Of course, this does nothing against, most decks of the meta. They can easily get around things. The fact that Stardust has to negate Hornet in the Inzectors means that it's off the field when you special summon your Centipede to do the exact same loop again. What's the point? So, please leave a comment on what you think about Dragunitys and what you think could, improve the deck and what you think about the deck in general. I'd love to hear what you think about it and what you think about my ideas about the deck. Please tell me if you like this segment and I'll do more decks, of course, like Inzectors, Wind-Ups, or anything that you guys suggest. Thanks, and I'll talk to you later.